Chapter 39, Sprite. David Hunter Duncan could not believe his luck. If he were a praying man, Joe Fungo would be the answer to his prayers. Jim Garfield had introduced them on Monday, and on Friday they were conducting a biological attack on downtown Memphis. It was a talent meets agent moment when they convened in the mall. They walked and walked and walked and conversed all the while. David Hunter Duncan told his companion his problem. Joe Fungo told his companion his solution. They would soak the Memphis federal courthouse with biotoxins. The attack would contaminate the building and infect the personnel. They would inflict enough chaos to make the feds strike deals with their pending cases. It still startled David Hunter Duncan just how fast things came together. He asked Joe Fungo how long it would take to develop his bioweapons, and he replied, "They're set to go." Joe Fungo stated that all they needed was some nighttime rain in Memphis. Come Friday, it was raining on Graceland. Joe Fungo had met his new friend in the mall on a Monday, and he trusted him enough to invite him to his house later that night. On 4 wall screens, Joe Fungo used street sense to simulate the area around the Memphis courthouse, as well as the area around the Memphis Federal Building. He displayed a facsimile of M-Town's electric grid and showed how easily they could inflict a small blackout with a well-placed .22 shell. It was as if Joe Fungo had been planning this mission for decades. The already impressed David Hunter Duncan was now a kid at Disneyland with an unlimited snack voucher. Upon leaving the viewing room, Joe Fungo showed David Hunter Duncan a walk-in closet packed full of police and fire uniforms. He had the goods to create a reasonable facsimile of Memphis firefighters. They might not pass a captain's inspection, but on a dark, drizzly night, they would serve their purpose. Now, 4.5 days after the initial meeting, they were in Memphis. The meteorological conditions were too good to pass on. Memphis would be hit by a long thunder shower that would start right after dark and would conclude a little past midnight. David Hunter Duncan and Joe Fungo dressed like generic firemen with boots and overcoats and fluorescent safety vests. Because of his large frame, they were unable to find a convincing suit for Ray. Therefore, he would drive and stay behind in the idling truck. Before reaching their ultimate destination, Joe Fungo routed the trio to a secluded site where he used a .22 caliber rifle to induce an electrical blackout that would be corrected a couple of hours later. He muffled the report with a homemade silencer positioned on the barrel of his semi-automatic. Yes, in theory, one strategically placed bullet could cause a power outage, but it took Joe Fungo a full box of ammo to complete the job. At the attack site, David Hunter Duncan and Joe Fungo removed the 3-liter Sprite bottles from the bed and stuffed as many as they could inside their raincoats. They waddled across the street to the federal courthouse. There, they removed the bottles and placed them on the sidewalk. In the darkened, rainy streets, they would not be spotted meticulously emptying the contents on the sidewalks and steps near every entrance of the building. Joe Fungo had been keeping the Sprite bottles in incubators for months. His cultivation technique was to open a bottle of Sprite, pour out a cup, and add a clear protein and some odorless corn syrup. He would then add either anthrax spores, brucellosis cultures, tularemia cultures, or a few more exotic organisms. Periodically, he would harvest the contents and add them to new cultures. The plan was simple. They would envelop the perimeter with Sprite. Sprite is clear and would not leave visible residue. Because it was sugary, it would stick to stone and asphalt and concrete. Pedestrians would carry the sugary residue from sidewalk to the interior of the building. The organisms in question had a 1 week to 2 week incubation period. Some of the exotics a little longer. In 15 to 20 days, the building would be contaminated, but no one would realize it right away. The sick calls would pile up, and the residue would be carried away by pedestrians and ants. It would take a while before the feds knew it hit them, and they might not ever figure out how it hit them. An explosion in slow motion is how Joe Fungo described the damage. No one interrupted the bioterrorist mission. They were able to take their time, and they emptied all of their bottles. To those areas blocked by fence, Joe Fungo applied large amounts of toxic Sprite with a super soaker squirt gun. The team was able to place all of the empty bottles in garbage bags, and they were able to casually remove boot and coat and toss the contents into the bed of the pickup. They applied field antibiotic solution and started a month-long oral antibiotic regime. Not one stray police cruiser drove by during the operation. The 3 men sat comfortably in the cab as Ray drove them back to his motorhome, which was parked at a campsite in rural Mississippi. There, Ray would drive the motorhome and Joe Fungo back to Texas, while David Hunter Duncan would empty the contents of the bed and then drive the pickup home. Leaving Memphis, Joe Fungo played a Sprite jingle from the 70s on the truck's file player. Sprite makes the way you want the world to be, clean and clear and bright. The 3 men smiled.